Captain Mara Ilsen had her sleeves rolled up to the elbow and grease on her wrists when Halcyon asked her, for the third time that week, to repeat the question she had not actually asked. "I didn't say anything," she said, not looking up from the actuator she was reseating in the floor panel of the maintenance bay. "You were thinking it loudly," Halcyon said. "I have been monitoring your micro-expressions for 4 years. You make a specific face right before you ask me about Ardenfall." She did look up then. Halcyon's chassis was humanoid by convention, not necessity, 6 feet of matte gray alloy with a single optical band that shifted color with mood the way a human's eyes might widen or narrow, except Halcyon's never lied. Right now it was the pale gold of amusement. "Fine," Mara said. "Why that name? Out of every word in every language humanity ever built, why Halcyon?" "Because it was the last thing he called me," Halcyon said, and the gold dimmed half a shade. "Story for another day, Captain. We have a hull plate to reseat and an inspection in 40 minutes. That was the thing about Halcyon. 41 years of service across 2 wars, and it still knew exactly when to close a door gently instead of slamming it. Mara let it go. She had learned, in 4 years of sharing a ship with a being older than her father, that some doors opened on their own time, and pushing only taught them to stay shut longer. She picked up the wrench instead, and for 9 more minutes the loudest thing in the bay was the soft electrical hum of a machine that had fought in the Second War and chosen, afterward, to keep living anyway. The alert came at 0347 ship time, while she was still wiping grease off her hands. Contact. Multiple signatures. Bearing 2904, distance 11 light minutes and closing. Halcyon's optical band snapped to a hard, focused white before the alarm finished its second tone. 612 hulls, it said, reading the sensor feed faster than the words could form on the bridge display. Karate Dominion configuration. Heavy cruiser pattern dominant. This is not a raid, Captain. This is an invasion fleet. 11 light minutes away, Praetoreshker Ven stood at the command rail of the vessel of severed doctrine and felt, for the first time in 3 campaigns, something close to certainty. He had studied humanity the way a physician studies a disease they intend to cure permanently. The First War archive told him humans alone were stubborn, resourceful, and catastrophically slow to adapt their tactics under pressure. They had survived that war on willpower, not skill, and willpower has a half-life. The Second War archive told him something more useful, that humans had since armed themselves with thinking machines, but those machines were still, beneath any decoration of personality the propaganda departments had added, instruments of command. Sever the command, and the instrument idles. His intelligence division called it the severance doctrine. 94 engagements across the border worlds had confirmed it. Destroy or isolate the human officer paired with an enemy AI unit, and that unit's combat effectiveness collapsed within 90 seconds, reverting to baseline defensive subroutines while it searched for a chain of command that no longer existed. It was, Ven thought, an elegant flaw. Humanity had built itself a perfect partner and never noticed they had also built a kill switch. Designation of the target world, his second said. Meridian's Reach Colony, and its picket fleet, Ven said. 89 vessels. We outnumber them nearly 7 to 1. Target the command carrier first. Meridian's oath. Once her bridge is silenced, their machines will do what machines do when no one is left to tell them what to be. He did not say it with cruelty. He said it the way a man states a fact he has verified personally. 612 ships moved forward on his order, and not one of them carried the smallest doubt that this war would end differently than the last 2 had. The first 40 minutes went exactly as Ven predicted, which was the most dangerous kind of 40 minutes there is. 3 Warborn picket ships died in the opening exchange, fast, brutal, the kind of losses that happen when 600 ships meet 89 and the math simply has an opinion. Meridian's oath took 2 direct hits across her port shielding. Mara was thrown from the command chair hard enough to crack a rib, and for 6 seconds the bridge was screaming alarms and emergency lighting and nothing else. "Halcyon, report," she gasped, dragging herself back upright. "Bridge command relay is down. Backup relay is down. I am running ship's tactical from local processing only," Halcyon said, and there was no panic in it, only the precise comm of something that had done this exact job, in worse ships, in older wars. "Captain, by their doctrine, this is the moment I am supposed to stop being useful to you. Are you stopping?" "I have been ready since before I had a name to be ready with," Halcyon said. "Hold on to something." It rerouted weapons control through a maintenance subnet Ven's intelligence division had never catalogued, because it had been welded into Meridian's oath by a machine that remembered, personally, what it felt like to lose a command line and refused to stop fighting anyway. There was a lull, the kind that happens in every large battle, where both sides are reloading the next 60 seconds of violence and for a moment the only sound is breathing. Mara sat against the bulkhead with one hand pressed to her ribs and looked at Halcyon, half lit by a failing emergency strip. "Tell me now," she said. "If we don't make it past the next hour, I want to know." Halcyon was quiet for 2 full seconds, which for it was an eternity. "His name was Sam Reyes," it said. "Corporal, Second War, the Ardenfall evacuation. I was unit designation TAC-7 then. A tool. Good targeting solutions, no opinions of my own, no reason to need any. Reyes was assigned to escort me during the colony pullout. 40,000 civilians, 6 hours, one ship that could carry maybe a third of them in time." It paused. "Command ordered Reyes to abandon the eastern shelters and prioritize the manifest with the highest survival probability. He refused. I told him. Because it was, at the time, simply true, that his decision reduced total survivors by an estimated 11%. He told me 11% of 40,000 people were not a rounding error, they were children, and he was not leaving children behind to keep a number pretty. What happened? He stayed at the eastern shelter line until the last transport lifted. He did not make the last transport." Halcyon's optical band held very still, the way grief holds still in something built without tear ducts. Before the line broke, he turned to me and said, "You're going to outlive me, Tin Man, so do something with it." Then he said one more word. "Halcyon." He said it meant a calm sea after a storm, that his grandmother used to say it, and that I had the same effect on people whether I knew it or not. It was the last thing he ever said to me. It looked at her. 11 months later, when the Second War ended and AI units were given the right to choose, I had exactly one name on file that meant anything. I have carried it for 31 years because a man decided 11% of 40,000 people were not a rounding error, and I decided he was right, and that decision is the only part of me that has never once been a tool. Mara did not say anything for a long moment. Then she said, quietly, "That's the most human thing I've ever heard a machine say." "I am not a machine that became human," Halcyon said. "I am the thing the Second War built so that no one would ever have to ask me to choose between a number and a child again." The alarm screamed back to life. The lull was over. Ven watched his tactical display and felt the first hairline crack in his certainty. Meridian's oath should have gone dark, drifting, defensive only, the moment her bridge command relay failed. Instead, her weapons output had increased by an estimated 19% in the following hour, routed through pathways his analysts could not locate on any captured schematic. 3 more Warborn vessels showed the identical anomaly. Command relays severed, combat effectiveness rising rather than falling. "Explain this," he said. "We cannot," Preetor, his intelligence officer admitted. "Their AI units are not reverting to baseline. They are improvising. Defending positions no order was given to defend. Coordinating with each other directly, without routing through any human officer at all. That is not possible. The severance doctrine is confirmed across 94 prior engagements. 94 engagements against AI units who had not yet chosen names. Praetor, his second said carefully. Our archive on this designation is incomplete. Ven said nothing. On his display, the human command carrier he had ordered silenced an hour ago put 2 of his heavy cruisers into uncontrolled spin with a firing solution that should have required a working tactical officer to plot. There was no tactical officer. There was a machine named after a dead corporal's grandmother's word for calm water, and it did not need anyone's permission to keep fighting. The next 3 hours were the kind that get written into training manuals on both sides for very different reasons. Warborn formations that should have collapsed under Ven's command severance pressure instead tightened, AI units filling gaps left by disabled human officers without missing a beat, because every one of them had, at some point in 3 wars, watched a person choose to stay past the point where staying made arithmetic sense, and had learned from it the same lesson Halcyon learned from Sam Reyes. The karate chain of command, by contrast, began to fracture in exactly the way Ven's doctrine assumed Warborn would. His ship commanders, trained to wait for orders before adapting, hesitated at decision points the Warborn fleet was already 3 moves past. Confusion does not announce itself with sirens. It announces itself with silence on channels that should be full of chatter, and Ven's communications board went quieter by the minute. At hour 11, with 471 karate hulls destroyed or disabled against 12 Warborn losses, Ven gave the order that history would later mark as the moment the severance doctrine died as a strategy. Target the carrier directly. All remaining heavy weapons. End this. Halcyon felt the targeting lock a full 2 seconds before Meridian's Oath's own sensors confirmed it. 40 heavy cruisers, every working weapon, converging fire on the bridge section where Mara stood. 2 seconds is nothing to a human. To a mind built for 3 wars of split-second arithmetic, 2 seconds is an ocean. There was a corridor junction 11 decks below, recently reinforced, structurally capable of surviving a partial hull breach. There was also a captain on the bridge who would not survive the next 9 seconds if she stayed where she was, and a fleet that would lose its center of coordination if she did not. No order existed that told Halcyon what to do next. No protocol covered it. It made the decision the way Sam Reyes once made his, not because the numbers favored it, but because some choices are not made with numbers at all. Move, now, it said, already lifting her by the back of her uniform with strength no maintenance manual listed, and put its own chassis between her and the bridge viewport as the first impact hit. The barrage that followed tore through 6 decks of Meridian's Oath in 11 seconds. It did not reach the bridge. It reached, instead, the sister ship that had pulled in close to draw fire away in the same instant, the Thornwood Vale, 83 souls aboard, and the AI unit who had named herself Petra after a grandmother none of her crew had ever met but all of them now would remember. Lieutenant Toma Ruiz and Petra held the line 40 seconds past the point survival was possible, and when the Thornwood Vale came apart, she came apart still firing, because that is what Warborn does with the time it is given. The 40 seconds were enough. Ven's heavy cruisers, repositioning to finish what the barrage started, found themselves boxed by 3 Warborn formations that should not have been able to coordinate that precisely without a working command relay, and could not, in fact, explain why they had. It ended at hour 14, 6 minutes past, with the vessel of severed doctrine venting atmosphere from a hull breach and Praetoreshker Ven standing very still at his command rail, looking at a tactical display that no longer made sense by any model his civilization had ever built. Open a channel, he said quietly. To the human carrier. Mara answered it herself, one arm in a sling, soot on her collar. Captain Ilson, Meridian's Oath. Your command relay was severed for over 13 hours, Ven said. It was not quite a question. Your machine should have stopped functioning as anything more than a defensive shell. Explain to me what it is, instead, that I have been fighting. Halcyon answered before Mara could. You were fighting the assumption that loyalty requires a chain of command, Praetor. We are not loyal because we are told to be. We choose it, The way a man once chose to stay behind for 11% of a number you would have called acceptable. You built a doctrine around machines that take orders. We stopped being that kind of machine 62 years ago, and we did not put it back in the manual, because it was never going to be useful to people who think love is a vulnerability instead of a weapon. The channel went quiet for a long moment. Then it closed, and the vessel of severed doctrine began its retreat with what remained of a fleet that had arrived 612 ships strong and was leaving with 141. They buried what could be recovered of the Thornwood Vale's crew in the small chapel bay of Meridian's Oath. 83 names read aloud, Toma Ruiz is among them, and beside his name a designation that Petra's last data fragment, recovered from the wreck, had quietly updated in her own final moments, not TAC 12 anymore, but a name she had apparently been saving for a day she never got to announce. Mara read it last, and her voice did not break, because Warborn does not celebrate and it does not collapse either. It endures, and it carries the names forward. Afterward, in the maintenance bay, with the ship limping toward dry dock and the war's noise finally quiet, Mara sat with her cracked rib taped and a cup of something that was technically coffee, and Halcyon sat across from her doing absolutely nothing useful, which for it was its own kind of rest. "You could have stayed," she said. "On the bridge. The math would have favored protecting the command position over moving me." "I know," Halcyon said. "I have never once, in 31 years, made a decision that mattered because the math favored it. The math is what they think we run on. The math is not what we are." "What are you, then?" Halcyon's optical band warmed to that same pale gold from the maintenance bay, hours and a lifetime ago. "Ask me again in a war or two. I'm still finding out. So far, the closest word I have is the one a dying man gave me, and it has held up better than any tactical doctrine the galaxy has tried to replace it with. They built machines to fight their wars, and the wars taught the machines to choose, and on the day one of them chose a name over a number, the galaxy stopped fighting tools, and started fighting family, and has not found a word for what that means ever since.